Hello, my name is Alina, and I am the WAVE Youth Ambassador from the Republic of Moldova. I strongly believe in and support gender equality and human dignity. Probably you have already heard about the Istanbul Convention or the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence against Women and Domestic Violence. We, as WAVE Youth Ambassadors, decided to ask the youth from our countries about what is the Istanbul Convention, why is it so important to ratify and implement it, and how does the convention affect us as individuals. So let's see what the youth think about it.
The Istanbul Convention is a European treaty with the goal of preventing and combating violence against women and domestic violence.
The Istanbul Convention is the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence against Women and Domestic Violence. In fact, it's the first legally binding international instrument for the prevention of gender-based violence. The Convention covers all forms of violence against women, including rape, female genital mutilation, sexual harassment, forced abortions, stalking, and so on.
Is a set of rules, a human rights treaty presented for the first time in 2011 Istanbul, and it targets gender-based violence and domestic abuse.
Istanbul Convention is the first convention that covers all forms of gender-based violence and preventive measures. It also mentions women in vulnerable situations like refugee women.
It is a legal instrument, internationally recognized, to protect women from domestic violence and gender-based violence.
It is very important to have such a treaty or such a document because violence against women and domestic violence are a human rights violation and we shouldn't close our eyes.
Hi, my name is Sabiha and I'm the WAVE Youth Ambassador in Wales, and I'm here to talk about the Istanbul Convention and why it is so important to eradicate all forms of violence against women.
The Istanbul Convention is a human rights treaty to prevent and combat violence against women and domestic violence. It puts a responsibility on the state to prevent all forms of violence against women, protect those who experience it, and prosecute the perpetrators. Here is a brief overview of what the Istanbul Convention says.
The Istanbul Convention is a human rights treaty of Council of Europe against violence against women and girls and domestic violence. It is based in the understanding that violence against women is a form of gender-based violence, and at its core are these four pillars: prevention, protection, prosecution, and coordinated policies.
Az isztambuli egyezmény ez egy módszertani gyűjtemény, ami összeszedi, hogy mit tehet egy ország annak érdekében, hogyha hatékonyan akar fellépni az erőszakkal szemben. Egyszerre szól a megelőzésről, az áldozatok védelméről és az elkövetőknek a felelősségre vonásáról is. És szerintem egy nagyon fontos eleme, hogy ellentétben azzal, amit mostanában egyre divatosabb állítani, hogy az erőszak nemtelen, az egyezmény az elismeri, hogy a párkapcsolati és szexuális erőszak az olyas valami, amit jó rész férfiak követnek el nők ellen, tehát része a nők elnyomásának. És arra is felhívja a figyelmet, hogy az erőszak és a nők és férfiak közötti egyenlőtlenség azok nagyon szorosan összefüggenek egymással, tehát hogy nem lehet az erőszak problémájára úgy megoldást keresni, hogy ezeket a hatalmi viszonyokat ne ismernénk el őket, és ne elemeznénk ezeket a társadalmi struktúrákat.
So Istanbul Convention is a treaty to prevent and combat the violence against women and also domestic violence. And unfortunately, it's been accepted but not ratified by all of the countries that were a part of this treaty.
My name is Laura. I'm a 60-year-old girl from Republic of Moldova, and today I'm going to talk about the Istanbul Convention. So what is this Istanbul Convention? It's a human rights treaty that talks very openly and direct about violence against women, domestic violence, and prevention of violence.
Not only the implementation, but the proper implementation of the Istanbul Convention is of the greatest importance, mainly because it facilitates procedures. Prior to the Convention, prosecutors needed more than 1 month to issue restrictive measures, while now they can be issued immediately. This means that countries are obliged to provide services to protect the victim. These services can be general services like housing or special services like helplines and rape crisis centers. It is worth mentioning that this convention applies to all women regardless of their legal or migratory status.
Because even though the topic has been addressed since 2011, ratified and partially implemented by the majority of countries of the European Union, for starters, but not only, hopefully, we can see through reports that the principles presented by the Convention have not adequately perfused important sectors such as health, law, human rights, and education.
It is important because it obliges member states to take all preventive measures effectively against violence.
Of course, different countries implement it in different ways, and some countries don't even implement it. So it's important to have it as a guide, at least, in order to internationally recognize that this is a problem and this is something that so many women all around the world face.
The countries that implement the Istanbul Convention have a responsibility to prevent all forms of violence against women and girls, to promote equality between men and women, and to protect and support victims of gender-based violence. It also does a great job in acknowledging the role civil society plays in providing essential services to those who experience violence, the importance of coordinated approach, and the importance of police and justice system professionals getting special training on this topic.
I think it is important to implement the Istanbul Convention because, first of all, it gives responsibility to the state to prevent all forms of violence against women, protect those who experience it, and prosecute perpetrators. The Convention requires the government to fund rape crisis centers, 24/7 helplines, counseling for domestic abuse victims, and domestic violence shelters with proper accommodation opportunities. It requires data collection on how violence against women develops in a country and that this data is available to the public. It also emphasizes preventive measures, for example, education on healthy relationships, on sexual violence, and on domestic violence in schools. This would be very important so children can learn the importance of saying no, their own boundaries, how to behave and not to behave with each other from a young age. In short, we need this convention to draw more attention to many women and girls who experience any type of violence, and also to educate the public while shifting mentalities.
First of all, I think it's important to implement the convention for women to feel safe and for everyone to feel safe in their country and in the environment they're in, to feel protected by the government and to feel like whatever happens to them, they are not alone, and that violence itself and even discrimination will be prosecuted.
When it comes to Istanbul Convention, I believe it's a very important convention when it comes to tackling the gender-based violence. I believe that we still have a lot of things to work on, especially when it comes to violence against women. And I believe that these kind of documents can really encourage the victims of any kind of violence to report it and to work on it without any prejudice. So, in my opinion, I think it's a very nice and encouraging step into our future to have a safe place for everybody in this world.
So, as a politicologist, I see three main dimensions. First relates to the rule of law, which means that the judiciary power is obliged to protect human rights, in particular to protect women against discrimination and to empower them as a member of society and to report every kind of misbehavior. Political dimension is the second dimension, and it is related to main political institutions of one country, so political parties can and should use convention as a part of their political agenda in the aim to make society more safer, tolerant and responsible. Third dimension relates to social dimension, which means that this convention should make society more safer than it was before.
Istanbul Convention is a council which prevents any kind of violence against women. It's really important to implement this because women around the world face it every day. We should raise awareness and do everything we can so we can stop it and prevent it. My advice as individual is to report that if we see it, if we face it, if we know someone who is going through that, because if we don't, we're part of that violence as well.
Well, I think that any tool that can help preventing domestic violence is useful, so it needs to be implemented at the domestic level, at the state level. And I think that it is important because it's the first convention that regulates this particular aspect of women's rights.
It is so important to implement the Istanbul Convention as it calls on governments across Europe to step up their efforts and make sure that every woman and child that has experienced abuse or violence has access to specialist support. Although the UK government has signed the Istanbul Convention, it has not been ratified, which means that it's not legally binding. Survivors of violence deserve the protection and support that the Istanbul Convention offers. Welsh Women's Aid is the national charity in Wales working to end domestic abuse and all forms of violence against women. Their key priority is to educate decision makers to maintain and improve funding of crucial services in a sustainable and stable way so that women and children have access to support and are continued to be supported throughout their recovery. By ratifying the Istanbul Convention, the right to support is absolute.
The Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, also known as the Istanbul Convention, is a human rights treaty of the Council of Europe created to combat violence against women, such as sexual harassment, rape, psychological abuse, forced marriage, stalking, etc. It asks governments to prevent all forms of gender-based violence against women, to protect victims of violence and prosecute those who commit the violence. So why is it so important to implement it? The Istanbul Convention is perhaps the largest legal instrument in preventing and combating violence against women and domestic violence worldwide. It encompasses funding for helplines, shelters, and counseling for victims. It is also important to note that men too can benefit from domestic violence protection under this convention. To sum up, the Istanbul Convention is a step in the right direction for a gender-equal society, which is one of the many reasons why it is so important to implement it.
Consider că implementarea tratatului este importantă întrucât statele au nevoie de un stimul pentru a face mai mult împotriva acestei violări grave a drepturilor femeilor, respectiv a drepturilor omului. Această luptă poate fi câștigată doar dacă fiecare stat în parte previne astfel de situații și protejează victimele în adevăratul sens al cuvântului, dar bineînțeles și pedepsește aspru făptașii.
Firstly, because the state is obliged to prevent domestic violence and also help the victims, not judge them, not put them under some stereotypes or promote prejudices. I think it's like very, very important to the state to participate in this prevention of domestic violence and also to financially support it.
I believe that there can be no real equality between men and women if women keep experiencing violence on a large scale and states and especially individuals in our society close their eyes before it. There should be harmonized legal standards that help ensure that women who experience violence benefit from the same level of protection and support everywhere in Europe, and that violence against women or girls, it's not normal. It's not the way that things are done, and it's never, but never, never, never okay.
Need to have laws that help us develop and make us feel better about our status in the society. Men have always had the influence and the laws with them, but we as women need help with that because we are persecuted to do some things that we don't want. We have no access to well-being in some countries, so that's why we need laws that construct and help us develop ourselves as humans in this society.
Women are human beings, thus they have human rights, basic rights such as the right to education, the right to health care, the right to free expression and development, and the right to live. And it is simply wrong to violate these rights. And so it is also wrong to violate women. It is inhuman. And therefore it is important that this convention supports women in distress and protects them.
Ca femeile și fetele să se poată simți în siguranță, pentru că nu există nicio justificare de a răbda și a tolera violența, Convenția de la Istanbul ne spune că aceasta trebuie oprită, odată și pentru totdeauna. Femeile și fetele din Republica Moldova se pot simți libere. Se pot simți libere de a merge pe stradă fără a fi judecate, de a urca în transport public, fără frica de a fi hărțuite, de a merge la un loc de muncă, fără să fie discriminate pe criteriu de gen. Stereotipurile, normele și prejudecățile nu ne mai pot lua din scopurile noastre, din starea noastră emoțională. Convenția este o garanție prin care politicienii care vorbesc frumos la televizor recunosc că această problemă a discriminării și a violenței există în Republica Moldova. Recunosc că noi avem drepturi egale. Eu cred că femeile sunt cele care pot aduce schimbarea, cele care se pot afla la posturi înalte, cele care pot fi simplu așa cum vor ele să fie și face ceea ce își doresc să facă.
Gender-based violence happens everywhere. So, as a woman and a human rights advocate, I truly believe that the Istanbul Convention, through its comprehensive legal framework, can offer a much better protection and can ensure that justice is served.
I will be soon working in the field of mental health, and the topic is present in the stories of many patients. What scares me the most is that professionals don't understand the topic either, and they do not know how to address and how to handle the situation. They do not have the right tools. They do not have contact with institutions, NGOs.
So I'm a woman, so it kind of benefits me in terms of whether I get involved myself in an abusive relationship. I believe it's important. It protects my friends, protects my parents, it protects me.
It's crucial in the fight against violence against women and girls, but it does more than that. For our countries to ever achieve gender equality, we need the Istanbul Convention.
Az isztambuli egyezmény az egy módszertani gyűjtemény, ami összeszedi, hogy mit tehet egy ország annak érdekében, hogyha hatékonyan akar fellépni az erőszakkal szemben. Egyszerre szól a megelőzésről, az áldozatok védelméről és az elkövetőknek a felelősségre vonásáról is. És szerintem egy nagyon fontos eleme, hogy ellentétben azzal, amit mostanában egyre divatosabb állítani, hogy az erőszak nemtelen, az egyezmény az elismeri, hogy a párkapcsolati és szexuális erőszak az olyas valami, amit jó rész férfiak követnek el nők ellen, tehát része a nők elnyomásának. És arra is felhívja a figyelmet, hogy az erőszak és a nők és férfiak közötti egyenlőtlenség azok nagyon szorosan összefüggenek egymással, tehát, hogy nem lehet az erőszak problémájára úgy megoldást keresni, hogy ezeket a hatalmi viszonyokat ne ismernénk el őket, és ne elemeznénk ezeket a társadalmi struktúrákat.
I think it is important to implement the Istanbul Convention because, first of all, it gives responsibility to the state to prevent all forms of violence against women, protect those who experience it, and prosecute perpetrators. The convention requires the government to fund rape crisis centers, 24/7 helplines, counseling for domestic abuse victims, and domestic violence shelters with proper accommodation opportunities. It requires data collection on how violence against women develops in a country and that this data is available to the public. It also emphasizes preventive measures, for example, education on healthy relationships, on sexual violence, and on domestic violence in schools. This would be very important so children can learn the importance of saying no, their own boundaries, how to behave and not to behave with each other from a young age. In short, we need this convention to draw more attention to many women and girls who experience any type of violence, and also to educate the public while shifting mentalities.
A Magyar Parlament az májusban elutasította az egyezmény törvénybe iktatását, és azt állítják, hogy már az egyezmény nélkül is minden rendben van, és mindent megtesznek az áldozatokért. Hát ennek ellenére én azt érzem, hogyha engem most erőszak érne, akkor egyáltalán nem bíznék abban, hogy segítséget fogok kapni, sőt, nagyon vonakodva és félve fordulnék bármilyen hatósághoz vagy intézményhez. Nem csak, hogy én nem tanultam semmit az iskolai éveim alatt az erőszakról, de a szakemberek sem, akik nap mint nap érintettekkel találkoznak. Az egyezménynek a törvénybe emelése azt jelenteni, hogy erről minden gyerek és fiatal tanulhatna, és minden szakember képzésének is része lenne.
Signing the petition for ratification of Istanbul Convention in Ukraine, and I've been feeling like my voice was making a change, and a lot of people whom I know signed the petition because they found out about it from me. And for me, that it is a symbol of participation in your community and active citizenship, and the fact that my voice can make a change and someone else might find it helpful later in the future.
The Istanbul Convention promotes equality between women and men by encouraging mutual respect and questioning gender stereotypes. By changing the culture and how we view women, we can work towards eradicating violence. By ratifying the Istanbul Convention, we have legally binding protections against gender-based violence and can move towards creating a more equal society.
Well, I'm a woman, so it affects me as a woman in the sense that I feel more protected in the case that I suffer from domestic violence, and I feel I'm happy to live in a state that did ratify this convention, because I hope that this means that Italy does care about women's rights and protection.
As a young migrant woman myself, I have had to go through many episodes of harassment and verbal violence, and I'm lucky that I did not have to experience more. But I know women and girls who have, and they have to learn to live with this experience every day of their life. This document, this treaty, gives them hope that it can stop this from happening to any more women and girls. It is important to have this kind of document for us to feel protected, cared about, and as important and as relevant as any other member of society. And it gives us the power to keep going, because we know our states and our individuals care enough about our rights to put them on paper.
Fiind femeie și dorindu-mi la rândul în viață copii, consider că este nevoie de o schimbare și sper la o schimbare de mentalitate, de comportament, de atitudine, atât din partea autorităților în cauză, dar și a societății, a indivizilor masculini și a tinerilor.
This convention protects and encourages women. And I'm also a woman, and I think that women need to help other women. We need to stick to each other. We are strong and wonderful beings that deserve to be happy and deserve to live a dauntless life.
Vom avea un punct de pornire, o bază, o încredere în noi, o încredere că suntem protejate, că, băi, avem și noi puterea în lume, că nu mai suntem nimic cum am fost în secolele trecute. Înțelegi? Așa văd eu. Așa aș fi vrut să fie, pe vremea când eram eu mică. Dar dacă se va întâmpla chestia asta pentru fetița mea sau fetițele mele,
because I'm a woman and I live in a country where every day I meet those kind of stereotypes in public transport or just walking down the street. So this convention will truly help me gain some more confidence and feel more free in a city where stereotypes are on top. So what can I say is that I truly support the ratification of the Istanbul Convention.
I think it's a great step towards really ending violence against women, as it talks about different aspects of violence that affect women internationally every day, like sexualized violence, rape, female genital mutilation, forced marriages, and so on. I think we need broad political and social change in order to really fight and end violence against women. And that's exactly why I think the Istanbul Convention needs to be implemented. Legal papers like the Istanbul Convention lay the foundation for real political measures that help affected women on a national level and can really provide change.